Hey folks, Matthew Weiss here, WeissAdvice.com and WeissAdvice here on YouTube. In this video, I want to talk about a really cool technique. It can get you in a lot of trouble if you misuse it, but when you need it and you use it right, it can be really, really cool and really, really useful. So last week, I talked about a reggaeton record, and I thought, what a perfect opportunity to demonstrate this idea. Now, I'm going to be doing this technique on a Pluck synth, but it works really well on kicks, snares, basically anything that's like very transient driven. So let's listen to a little bit of this record, and then let's talk about what the technique is, why to use it, and how to use it. Here we go. Okay, so nice little reggaeton beat going on here. Good island feel. Love it. But there's this Pluck hit that just isn't really cutting through. Now notice when we hear it in solo, it cuts through just fine. It's got plenty of transient to it. It's just for whatever reason, when we hear it in the context of the record, even with it turned way up, it just feels like it's getting lost. Right, we hear the sustain, but we don't hear the attack. And that's where the heart of this technique comes into play. I'm going to show you why we might want to use this technique first by trying to solve some of the problems that are going on without it. So, okay, I can't really catch the pluck of this Pluck synth. What can I do? Well, I can pan it out of the center so that it gets a little bit of its own space. And that definitely helps a little bit. It's coming with a little bit of a compromise. Now the reverb is kind of panned to the right, which feels a little strange to me. I kind of want the reverb to be bedding the overall record, kind of like a pad synth. That would be a lot better, but I also want to be able to hear the pluck. So, okay, small compromise there. What about EQing up some of the stuff that would allow it to stick out? It's helping, I guess. It's starting to kind of now eat the mix alive because the sustain that we can hear is starting to become a little bit too present. So it's kind of starting to mask the drums. But, I mean, you know, again, a game of compromises. And then lastly, how about like a little bit of distortion here because those drums are pretty crunchy. Okay, we got something that was okay, but quite frankly, I don't know if the compromises were really worth it. So, what is this technique I've been alluding to? The idea here is we're going to split the attack part of the signal from the sustain part of the signal, and we're going to process them differently. And the way that we do that is with gates. Now, I'm going to show you the way that I prefer to do it because I have the better tool available for doing it. What I really, really like is the kilohertz gate. I think this one is the best one, and I'll show you why in a moment. So the way that we do this is we split the signal, we duplicate it, and we call one the hit, and we call the other one the sustain, or something similar to that effect. And for the hit, what we're going to try and do is isolate just the transient of the sound. So this is a very straightforward technique with a gate. This is basically how we use them. We're setting the threshold, we're setting a very fast attack, and then we're timing the release so that we eliminate as much of the sustain as we can get away with while still preserving the attack. One of the reasons I like the kilohertz gate is we have a hold function, which means that we can hold the gate open for the duration of the attack, which is really not that long. You know, I've got it at 5.51 milliseconds. It's probably a little bit longer. And then time the release so that we have a smooth decay. That's pretty darn clean isolation right there. So now, why I really like the kilohertz for this, I'm going to show you how to do it without it too, because I don't like, even when I endorse a company or software, and in this case I do actually have an endorsement deal with Slate, but even when I do, I still don't want to make you feel like you're forced to buy something. So I'm going to show you another way to do it, and I'm going to use a slate gate, but you can use a gate, just any normal gate to do it. It's just a little bit more complicated. But here, why I like the kilohertz one is we have this flip function, and what this flip function does is it reverses the idea of what the gate is. Normally, when something exceeds the threshold on a gate, it opens the gate. By flipping it, what it's going to do is close the gate. So it kind of turns the gate into like a really crazy compressor, a compressor that can actually go below the threshold limit of the amplitude. So in other words, we could exceed the amplitude, we could exceed the threshold with an amplitude of like 3 or 4 dB, but we could do 100 dB of gain reduction. So it functions in a really cool way. So by using this flip function, we can eliminate the attack and leave just the sustain in the signal. So I'm going to play it without the flip. And we have just attack. Now I'm going to hit flip. And now we have the attack and the sustain on two separate channels. And I think it's pretty apparent why this could be really useful, right? There's a ton of uses for it. A really good one is like if you're doing EDM records and you want the attack of a kick drum to be really, really crunchy, but you want the sustain to be really clean, which I think is a pretty common occurrence. You can split the kick signal into attack and sustain, and then you can distort the attack and you can leave the sustain really clean, and you get a really clean bass with a really crunchy attack, and that works very, very well. Similarly, you could also, like, sometimes we want a really clicky kick in an EDM record. Same idea, we can split the attack and then we can boost the heck out of the top end on the attack and leave the sustain alone, and so no kind of top end textures would come up in the sustain. So a lot of uses for this. But the one that I want to show you here is with this record, of course, on this Pluck synth. So now, what I can do is, with the attack and the sustain separate, first of all, I can pan the attack without panning the sustain. So I can move the attack over to the right and get it out of the center while keeping the sustain bedding with a concentric stereo spread. On top of that, I can take the sustain signal and I can widen it. So now I've got a completely different stereo imaging of this Pluck synth that I could not get without this technique. Now, let's talk about getting the Pluck to stand up, right? If we go into this here, and I go with just the attack, I can boost the heck out of any frequencies that I want on the attack. It's not going to change the sustain at all. So here I found that about 560 Hertz really helped this Pluck cut. I could do 15 dB, and honestly, it's not like... It sounds a little phasey, maybe, but just a hair. So I'm gonna do like a good 9 dB bump. And no masking occurring because it's such a short sound, it still leaves plenty of space. If you have the low end guide, you know that I talk about horizontal space and the value of that. That idea also translates to other masking situations like this one potentially. And yes, the low-end guide is still actually going to be available because my web people are on vacation because I forgot that normal human beings with normal jobs take vacations. So you can still get that by signing up for the newsletter until I think like January 4th or 5th, but that's a secret. Anyway, let's add that crunch to the attack so that it competes with the crunch of the drums. Okay, now we're poking out a little too much. I'm going to back out that boost. So now I've got the Pluck, the actual attack of the Pluck doing whatever I want. Now I can go into the sustain. I can work the sustain completely differently. I can put like a little bit of like an eighth note kind of a dotted eighth sort of swing to it, like an LFO that's triggering on a dotted eighth, which will give it that kind of because those rhythms are dotted eighth rhythms, so it'll give it that same sort of bounce. I can boost or cut whatever frequencies I want. There's a couple of like frequencies, like windy frequencies in the upper mids that I could completely get rid of, and then I could boost the warmer tones. I don't know what I was doing with that EQ, but I'm not doing anything with it, so I'm not going to turn it on. And then I can adjust the levels independently. I can have as much attack or sustain as I want. And now that Pluck has a lot more presence, I can just get it to work in the mix in a way that I couldn't before. So, okay, what if we don't have this specific gate, which I do actually think is really great. I think the whole kilohertz bundle is really wonderful. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with it that I haven't found that there to be a real, like, equivalent in other plugins. But we can do it with a regular gate. We just need an extra little something here. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to set our gate so that we isolate just the attack like we did before. Here I'm using the another slate gate, but I mean, really, like, just your gate of choice, isolate the attack. It's pretty straightforward. You set the attack very fast, you set the threshold to where the attack opens up the gate, and then you set the release basically as fast as you can get away with without actually thinning the attack out. And we end up with something like this. Which actually, as an attack signal, in this particular case, I like better than the kilohertz gate. Where it's not quite as great is when we get the body signal. So the way we do this is we copy that gate over and we flip the polarity. So now we're out of phase, and then we have a duplicate, a third duplicate of the track that's completely unaffected at the same level. So now the attack signal is out of phase with the normal signal. The attacks are going to cancel, and it's going to leave the sustain behind. So here's our normal signal. Here's just our attack out of phase. And here's the combination of the two. Now, the only drag is with most gates, you're going to get a little bit of that click left behind, and that might just have to be something that you're going to live with. You can simply squash it down with a limiter to reduce it. Or you could print the track and run a declicker. That's another way to get rid of that click. There's probably other ways to do it. I just haven't necessarily figured them out because once I got the kilohertz gate, I stopped trying, which is not great for somebody who's teaching things on YouTube. But hey, that's not the point of this video. But anyway, so by doing it with these three tracks, you can get the same effect. It just requires an extra step. So yeah, same idea right there, and then, you know, we can have all the fun stretching out the image and all that kind of good stuff. And the other thing I will say is that that little bit of click that gets left behind does get masked by the attack signal, so it's not like the worst thing in the world. Anyway, just wanted to show that technique. Let your imagination run wild. There's a million different places where you can use this kind of technique. Practice it, get it down under your belt so you have it in your arsenal, and also know when not to use it. Because a lot of the times you do kind of destroy the integrity of the signal. It can be a little fishy when you're working with, like, say, rock drum kit, and you try to do it to the snare. Suddenly things start to get a little bit wonky unless you're really, really careful. But it can be done. Anyway, if you dig this video, hit that like button. If you want to catch more videos like this, hit subscribe with the bell notification so you get notified. And lastly, you know what we say here at WeissAdvice. We are musicians, sound is our instrument, and I will catch you next time.